Getting up close and intimate. Totally not taboo with Tracy. Celebrating sexual positivity both in and outside the bedroom.
Hi learner lovers, and welcome back to Totally Not Taboo with Tracy. This is where we talk about everything sex and sexuality that has been considered taboo. We are opening Pandora's box and we are going to be exploring everything nice and naughty. We are available on YouTube for visual podcasts and Spotify, Apple Podcast, and various other audio platforms. Today we're going to be talking about polyamory. This is a very, very exciting topic. Something that not many people know much about. It's becoming very popular these days. When I say popular these days, people are talking about it more. Welcome to my guest,
Erich Viedge.
Erich Viedge has his own podcast called The Relationship Coach. And he will talk about all things relationship on his podcast. So I suggest that you get to that podcast and have a listen. I'm not going to mess up anymore. And I'm very happy to have you with us again.
Thank
we
you.
did have quite a long, in-depth discussion a while back, and I loved chatting to you. It just really opened my eyes so much about polyamory and non-ethical monogamy.
Well, ethical non-monogamy. It's
Correct.
not non-ethical monogamy. So what did you remember about our chats, and what resonated with you, or what arose for you, that came up for you?
So what I think really did resonate was, well, something that I'd like to explore more with you is how is it possible to love more than one person at a time, and why the hell would you want to? You know, for me, it's just like there's so much effort in making one person happy. How do you possibly split your time trying to make two people happy? So that's the fundamental question that I have. The other thing is that I think that it's become, and I wouldn't like to, give it, belittle or diminish polyamory in any way whatsoever. But it seems to become a trend nowadays. Maybe people don't really understand it. The other thing is when the relationships break down or break off, and there's pain, there's loss, there's mourning. How does that then affect the primary relationship?
Okay, so should we start from the top?
Yes, there's one other thing.
Okay, I should have been making notes about all the questions you've asked.
Well, I'm sure I will remember. The other thing was boundaries.
Okay,
Yeah.
lovely.
So go for it, please.
Beautiful.
Let's chat.
All right, so from the top, you said, why would people want to love more than one person? How do you do it, and why would you want to? So polyamory is in fact defined as the desire or practice of having more than one relationship, by which we mean sexual and romantic relationship. So that's the kind of definition people will often say. It comes from the Greek poly, which means many, and the Latin amore, meaning love, right? So many loves, essentially. Why do you fall in love with more than one person, and why would you want to? Well, Helen Fisher, the researcher, she claims, I'm sure it's true, to be the first person to study love in an MRI. So she put people in love into a magnetic resonance imaging machine, and she studied their brains on love, basically, while they were in love and so on. And she has found through her research that the desire for love and connection is an innate biological desire and drive. So there's why do we eat? That's the kind of question you're asking me. Why do we breathe air? The desire for love and connection is a human drive. It's not a desire, it's a drive. And if you've ever had a child or a puppy, or a cat, you'll see that drive in action. It's a biological imperative for us. So that answers why would I want to love more than one person? Or why do I? And then why would I want to? Because there's a lot of time implication. And you said something interesting, Tracy. You said it's hard enough to make one person happy. I don't make anybody happy. It's my job to make myself happy. And it's my partner's job to make themselves happy. So to give you an insight into my own relationship structure, I've been married to a woman for nearly 19 years now. We have 3 children together, and we live together. We're not divorced, we live together. And recently, another partner has moved into the house. So I'm reluctant to say that she moved in with us, for reasons I'll get to in a moment. So the 3 of us live together. People ask the following questions. What's it like for your wife and your girlfriend to be in the same house together? They're actually very good friends. They're not sexually involved with each other. That's the other question people ask. They're not sexually involved with each other. They're both straight. But they will go for pedicures and so on and skinner about me, I'm guessing. Sometimes they even tease me and talk about me in front of me, you know. So they're good friends. It's a model we call kitchen table poly, because all your partners can be around a kitchen table together. This is not the only model of polyamory there is out there. There is a thing called parallel polyamory. And in fact, I only met my wife's other partner last night at Poly Cocktails. We have a monthly get-together called Poly Cocktails. And I met him last night for the first time. So that would be what we call parallel polyamory. Other questions people ask is, what about the kids? Got 3 children.
Yes.
How old are they now? It keeps changing, you see. 10, 12, and 16. For the moment, it'll change in a few months. As time goes.
I get that
I have
too.
to keep remembering, updating it. You know, how old are they now?
Absolutely.
I'll tell you a very funny story. Well, I thought it was quite funny and quite sweet. Yesterday, my boy was at school, and he was chatting to 2 brothers, and they were saying how hard it is being children of a single parent, because their parents are divorced, and essentially they live with their mom, and how hard it was. And they said to my boy, "Aren't you lucky to have 2 parents?" Actually, he said, "I have 3." So one of the boys said, "Well, you have to give us one then." So the kids are completely on board with it. There's no animosity or problems. So that's a little bit unusual, because we were out to our kids the moment we started becoming sexually non-exclusive, my wife and I. We decided no longer to be sexually exclusive, and I think my baby was 3, and I think my eldest was about 10. And so we didn't have any desire to hide that from our children. They would say, "Where are you going?" And we'd say, "We're going on a sleepover." And then they would say, "Well, why can't we go on a sleepover?" "Well, you can, but at the weekend." "Papa and Mummy can go on sleepovers during the week, and you can go at the weekend. That's how that works." So they understood that completely intuitively, right? And in fact, I said to my boy, he must have been about 12, I said, "This woman, who is she to me?" And he said, "She's your girlfriend." I said, "Absolutely right." There was absolutely no problem at all. Now, for my other partner's children, her children are now 20 and 23. The girl was 16 when I met my partner. That was a bit more difficult. You know, you're socialized, especially as a young woman, to equate monogamy with commitment, and to equate monogamy with love. And this idea of an open marriage was very difficult for the daughter in particular. Also, you know, my partner had been divorced for a few years, and I think they were still mourning the divorce and the lack of family structure, and so there's still quite a lot of anger there from her point of view. I mean, the boy who's 23 now, young man, he's wonderful. He's very accepting. I think he treats me a little bit like an older uncle. You know, he certainly phoned me and asked me some really quite intimate questions about his own relationship, which I'd really treasure and honor. You know, he's a wonderful, wonderful guy. So that's the setup that we have. So you asked about time commitments. It is Time consuming, yes. So the way it works is, as I said, the women are not sexually involved with each other at all, or romantically for that matter. And so how do we operate the sleeping arrangements? And so I sleep with one partner for 2 nights in a week, and then, or for 2 nights, and then I sleep with the other partner for 2 nights. And so each partner gets 2 nights with me in a row, and then they have 2 nights to themselves, which I tell you, it suits them down to the ground. They treasure their alone time, and they treasure their time with me. And someone at Poly Cocktails last night said to me, "When do you get 2 nights off? You must be worn out." I said, "Well, I've got a grey beard, but I'm only 35.
Yes, but that's only 4 nights of the week.
No, it's 2 nights, 2 nights, 2 nights. So I alternate, so it's not a week, sorry. It's not a week,
Yes. No, I think you deserve 3 nights to yourself.
Where am I going to sleep, Tracy? There's only so many beds to go around.
Yeah, I can make a plan. We also touched on jealousy last time.
Yes, and so we should.
Yes, let's have a go at that one.
All right. So jealousy does arise. Of course it does. And in fact, this is one of the things that newbies to polyamory worry about. And you were saying, there are lots of ways of doing it, and people might not understand it. And indeed, that is true in my experience. People don't necessarily understand it. And people come to polyamory from 2 main routes, but I'll talk about the one route. People have a conversation, and I joke about Becky in accounts. And somebody will say to the other person, we might be married for, pick a number, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years. But I saw somebody and they caught my eye, and now I'm wondering if I shouldn't pursue a relationship with that person. And then very often a very honest conversation ensues about the nature of our desires and our attractions. And suddenly that opens up a whole new world of intimacy for this couple. And they become newly infatuated with each other. Because suddenly, for the first time in many years, they're being open and honest about what they want in bed. And this is a very vulnerable thing. And when they get acceptance from their partner, it builds intimacy like nobody's business. And then they decide, the 2 of them, they decide to go and find a third. And they call this polyamory. People in polyamory call that unicorn hunting. And it is disparaged and looked down on. And for why? For what reason?
Well, can you first explain unicorn concept? Unicorn.
Let's talk about that. So the unicorn, what does the couple want? The couple wants HBB. That's what they decide they want.
Which is?
Hot by babe.
Hot by babe.
Oh yeah. No. What you want is a woman, never a man. You want a woman who's going to come into the relationship. Oh, it's going to be great. And they're going to come in and they're going to love us both equally. And they're going to tend to us both equally, and they're going to have sex with us both equally, and we're going to share the bed, and they're going to share, we're going to share expenses, and we're going to share all the chores, and it's going to be awesome.
Porn star awesome.
Even better than porn star awesome, because it's real life.
Correct,
Tracy.
of course.
And it's called the unicorn hunting because there ain't no such thing, babe. And why not? Why not? Because these couples have already created a little box for a human being to fit in. It's like buying a puppy. They think it's a puppy, right? And this box is essentially a sex toy. The job of this hot by babe is to fulfill the sexual fantasies of the woman and the man in the couple, and then to go away and be disposable.
Of course.
They certainly mustn't enforce anything. They certainly mustn't make any demands. For example, if their brand of mayonnaise is not in the fridge, they must not complain. If we order pizza and they don't like anchovies and we like anchovies, then they must not. Too bad. We are the primary couple.
It's a puppy.
Exactly.
They don't have
a say.
Of course not.
So then why would anybody buy into that? Why would anybody do that? But there are lots of couples who really fervently believe that they're doing nothing wrong by treating people as disposable. Now, I'm also not saying that there are no unicorns out there, because it can happen that hot by babes, women, do want to date couples. It does actually happen because it suits them for whatever reason it suits them. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If that's what they want to do, they must go for it. The real trick is not to fall into the trap of couples privilege. That's what it's called, right? Couples privilege. Where the couple gets to decide everything and the hot by babe must fit in with the couple's plans.
Right.
What you want is that the person that is the new partner also has agency and a say in what's going on. So does this newer partner, do they want to sleep with only the one person in the couple or both of them always? Very often there's a rule that they have to sleep with both of us at the same time. So there are two things. The first one is the couple's privilege, and then let me go back to the beginning of this conversation. I don't want to say that my partner moved in with us, because can you see the inherent power dynamic there?
Yes.
We have a place.
Correct.
She moved in with us.
Correct.
And whose place is it? It's our place, and she's just living here. No. When that happens, we have to recontract
Right.
our relationship, our power dynamics, who gets to decide what's in the house, what gets decorated, what decals go on the glass doors so we don't, bump into them, what we watch on television, what we eat. All of this has to be renegotiated, recontracted, because of this, what we call couples privilege.
Right.
So then, let me go back to your jealousy question, which is a long way of getting to it.
Yeah.
Why do couples decide on this hot by babe idea? Because they want to protect the relationship. They want to protect the relationship from jealousy. They think that if they find this mythical creature, this hot by babe, they will not feel jealousy because she will love us both equally. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in relationships, Tracy. I don't know if you have or haven't. I have never seen it being possible that two people fall in love with each other at the exact same rate. Never mind one person falling in love with two different people at the exact same rate. How does that even work? It doesn't. Our emotions are our emotions. And so they're trying to force this equality which just never exists in order to preserve themselves, to protect themselves from this jealousy, which people are terrified of, jealousy. They're terrified of it. And it has a very special place in the mythology of the West, this green-eyed monster myth of jealousy. We excuse extremely bad behavior if it's jealousy. If a man is jealous of a woman, he loves me. If a man is looking through my phone because he's jealous, he loves me. If a man is violent towards somebody that I'm having coffee with, it's because he loves me. It's not because he's a controlling,
Absolutely.
I don't want to use a bad word here, but it's not because he's a controlling, abusive.
Absolutely.
Possessiveness is seen as love.
Yes.
But
It's controlling and it's suffocating and
deeply problematic.
deeply problematic.
So this jealousy has this very strange kind of privileged position in our society, where jealousy is seen as a good thing. It's bad, but it's also a good thing. People want to avoid jealousy at all costs. And as polyamorists, we have a slightly different point of view. We say jealousy arises, but you know what else arises? Anger. What else arises?
Resentment.
Joy. Resentment. And so how do we deal with anger and resentment? We deal with them. We apply some skills. We try to understand our own emotions. We try to understand the situation. We try to understand our partner's actions. And we try to come to an understanding of what's making us angry. And then what we do is we communicate our anger to the person in a very kind and loving way, as loving and kindly as we can. And we try to unpack that, and I take my responsibility for my own anger. And I say, this is what's happened that really caused this very extreme reaction in me. How can we together either make it so that I no longer get triggered by that, so I can work on myself, or that we change the situation so that doesn't happen anymore.
However,
I'm listening.
not everybody is as evolved and enlightened as you. So we do get very hurt people. So you make it sound, and from your perspective and your experiences, you're in it consciously. Your partner is conscious. Your primary partner, your wife, is conscious. You have an open communication, there's consent, there's agency, etc. And I suppose that's why we're doing this podcast, because we want to educate on having the optimal experience. So I do understand that there is so much, there are boundaries and there is a lot to be taken into consideration. And I respect that completely. And jealousy, what I was thinking is, what happens if, do I call her your wife?
Certainly.
Primary partner.
No, primary partner,
Not
I'd rather
primary.
you didn't say that.
Okay.
Because how do I choose between these two women? If one of my partners said you have to get rid of the other person, how do I do that? If my wife were to say to me, it doesn't work for me anymore, you can no longer date that person, what must I do now? What kind of controlling, awful thing is that for a person to do?
Correct.
So to call somebody my primary partner implies a power dynamic that we no longer want to subscribe to.
But she is the mother of your children.
Absolutely right. She is.
And she is your wife.
Okay.
Um,
And I've been with her for 20 years, not 4.
exactly.
So there's certainly a lot longer history there.
Correct.
And we've grown up together. I mean, I met her when I was 32, 33, 34. And I met my other partner when I was 45.
And what if she says to you, it doesn't feel right anymore?
So this is not an answer. She wouldn't do that. And the answer is that the only thing I can say is I'm not going to abandon my partner of 4 years because you're no longer feeling comfortable. So I'd rather, let's talk about your discomfort. Let's talk about that. So let's talk about jealousy. What is jealousy? So jealousy is a very interesting thing. Jealousy, what does Jermaine Greer say? It's what you think happened. It's FOMO in a way, right? Jealousy is somebody's getting something that I think is mine. So we have a puppy dog. She's not a puppy, she's 3 or 4 years old. The most, you use the word irksome creature. Oh my, say that on. Let me pat the cat, and the dog is all over me like a rash.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the dog thinks that my loving the cat is going to take away my affection from the dog. The dog thinks that all the affection that I bestow, quite frankly, on anybody, on my children, on my partners, if I am bestowing affection on someone, the dog thinks that I am taking away something that belongs to her. And that is what jealousy is. Jealousy is rooted in insecurity. So what happens with jealousy is a man, typically, not always, will feel insecure and then will say to their partner, you are no longer allowed to do X, Y, and Z to protect my feelings. Because I don't like feeling this insecurity, I call it jealousy, and so I'm going to control your behavior. In polyamory, we don't do that.
Right.
So if my wife were to say this no longer feels right, I would say let's talk about that.
Yeah. And you mentioned ownership, and I think for me the basis of jealousy is ownership, and we can't own somebody else.
Yeah.
The minute we think we own somebody else, we're in a lot of trouble, and that's when
Yeah.
we're in trouble.
So I told the story the last time we spoke, and it's just a funny story. I came home one night, and it came to pass that my partner, my wife, had been taking photographs of herself and sending them to somebody. I won't divulge the nature of the photographs, but I'm sure you can guess. And I became upset. Upsetness arose in me, Tracy. I don't mind telling you it did.
You are human.
Yeah. And so I said to her, upsetness has arisen in me.
Yes.
She said, what's that about? I said, you can't do that. You're my wife. She said to me, it's my body, it's my phone, it's my airtime. What part of this is yours? And what's interesting to me, Tracy, is what was she taking away from me at that moment? The fact that she's sharing something of herself with somebody else takes away nothing from her sharing something with me. She's shared things with me on many occasions, things she hasn't shared with other people. And I'm sure she's shared things with her boyfriends and her friends that she's never shared with me. This is the nature of relationships. How does it take away from me? And so you said something interesting which I want to question. Not everyone's as evolved as you, Erich, Not everyone's as woke. Well, how do you think I got this way, Tracy? So you also described a beautiful model of a relationship. You said it was open, it was full of communication and consent and taking responsibility for our emotions. Shouldn't all relationships be like that?
In an ideal world, absolutely. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the business I have, and you wouldn't have your podcast, and we wouldn't be continuously educating people.
Yeah, it's called annuity income.
Yeah.
So we don't say that monogamy is bad and polyamory is good. We also try not to say that polyamory is more evolved or better. We say that some people prefer to have relationships with more than one person, and other people, the joke is, you're polyamorous, but you've only got capacity for one partner. Then you're monogamous, right?
Right.
So the term is polysaturated. So some people have 2 partners like I do, some people have 3 partners, some people have 4 partners. At one point, and you said this, doesn't it take time consuming? Yes, you become polysaturated, we call it. It's a little bit like polyunsaturated margarine.
Absolutely.
And so we say that monogamous people are polysaturated with one partner. So that's how that works.
Yeah. It really is a controversial, for me, it's controversial.
Because?
Because I would rather have the conversation with my partner up front and say, listen, we're getting married. What does that look like to you? Does that mean that you and I are committed to each other for life? And yes, life means however long as we're alive. And are you okay that you and I are only going to be having sex with each other?
Forever.
Forever.
That's the end of it.
And that's it. Because couples don't have these conversations.
Did you have that conversation when you got married?
Definitely not.
And I'm guessing you were married before the age of 30.
Definitely.
So there you go.
Exactly. And so we go into this marriage with a whole lot of expectations that and possibly unrealistic expectations.
And unspoken.
Unspoken. And of course, because we get married before our 30s, we haven't had a lot of life experience, and we don't actually realize that things are going to change because our adult brains are not yet developed, right?
So I think there's something else that's going on, Tracy. It's an incredibly difficult conversation to have. It's a difficult subject to broach. How do I say to my bride, my fiancée, darling, I dig your peaches. I'd love to shake your tree, but I don't want to eat peaches for the rest of my life. There are going to be apples I might want to eat at some point.
But we're absolutely sure when we get married, oh no, darling, you're the only one I'll ever want. Anyway, as life would have it, it just appears that I thought I would want peaches for all my life, but then an apricot walks.
Oh, I love apricots.
Oof, the best. And so an apricot walks past, and I decide, I'd love to try an apricot.
Becky from accounts, yeah.
Becky from accounts, exactly. So we then haven't got the courage to have that conversation. And so a spouse cheats.
Okay, so we can unpack that a little bit. Let's not lump polyamory in with cheating. So you talked about...
No, so what I'm talking about is ethical non-monogamy.
Well done.
Got it. So, right, that is the ideal. But we are again not living in an ideal world. So we are here to educate. So do couples have this conversation, even though they vehemently insist, you're the one for me?
So you're right. So that's what's happening, right? There's a lack of honesty with oneself. There's an apricot. I really want that apricot. So there's a lack of honesty with ourselves. And there's a lack of honesty with our partner because we feel that if we even mention the word Becky or apricot, our relationship will end. And that's a very, very terrifying thing. The last thing we want is our relationship to end. So we think this is what's going to happen. I'll eat apricots on the sly. I'll hide the pips. It'll be fine. What she doesn't know won't hurt her. And it never works out that way. Never works out that way. So why do people cheat? That's a different thing. What causes that? And very often it's a breakdown in a relationship. Very often. So it would be beautiful, Tracy, if I had thought, oh, I want to eat peaches for the rest of my life until I see an apricot for the first time and think, I've never seen one of those before. That looks delicious. And I say, have you seen these apricots? They're yummy. And we could have that conversation, but typically that's not what happens. What can happen is that somebody will cheat. And to come back from that, is difficult. It's not impossible, but you've broken quite a fundamental trust there. And then to recover and rebuild a relationship, recontract, build a new relationship on the ashes of this cheating, and then to decide to become non-monogamous, how do you think that's going to land? It ain't going to land so well, Tracy.
Yeah.
So if you have met somebody that you like the look of,
Or the taste of.
well, before you like the taste of them, my suggestion is you have a different conversation. It's much, much better, more skillful, more honest, more ethical to have a difficult conversation first rather than a repair conversation after.
Of course.
It's very difficult because we are so terrified of losing our relationships.
Yeah.
So, I mean, silly example, when we got married, we went to not one, but 2 different marriage counselors. And I'm going to ask you a question now. How many times do you think the marriage counselors brought up the idea of infidelity?
Many.
None. Not one time.
Really?
We're getting married, we're going into a marriage.
True.
And not once did they say, what will happen? What does monogamy mean?
Absolutely right.
What does sex mean? What does flirting mean?
Yeah.
What is your picture of monogamy? Let's surface those unspoken expectations.
For me, as a therapist, I would bring up cheating or infidelity. How many times have you cheated before now? Before the wedding? Because that's a very, even couples come to me, we're not even married yet and there's already been infidelity, which is a sad thing as well.
Or have you cheated in previous relationships?
Correct.
What are your opinions of cheating?
Absolutely.
Do you know somebody who's cheated? Esther Perel famously, when she does these talks, she says, who in the audience has been touched by infidelity? Not that you yourself have cheated or been cheated on, but have been touched by infidelity. My father cheated. I mean, and that had profound implications in my life, right? So I was touched by infidelity. My partner's father, she doesn't know that for sure. She thinks probably he was cheating. We're all touched by, not all, 80%, says Esther Perel.
So my mind is doing a little bit of a fantasy walk through your house. Let me elaborate. Okay. What happens if your wife wants to bring a third in?
Wants to bring one of her partners home?
Yes, to live.
Oh, to live?
And you don't have your partner.
Oh, so let's say something happened to her and suddenly, okay, well then I guess we'd work it out, Tracy.
And she wanted to do 2 nights with him, 2 nights with you.
I guess we'd work it out. Is it difficult? Of course it's difficult. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. Is it an adjustment? Absolutely it's an adjustment. Somebody else is around your dinner table eating dinner. It's an adjustment. You probably haven't lived with people who aren't your direct family since you were in your 20s, since you were at university. You may have a dim recollection of what that was like. It's awkward.
Yeah, and she's having an emotional connection with him.
And
she's having a sexual connection with him.
I hope so.
And there's FOMO.
Well,
there might be FOMO.
There may be FOMO. Okay, and then I discuss that with her. You see, can you see?
Yes, no, for sure.
There's the old joke, ethical non-monogamy. What does that mean? It means that you're no longer sexually exclusive. That's what monogamy is a weird one because it means one marriage, actually.
Right.
But we seem to think it means sexual exclusivity with one partner. So ethical non-monogamy is you're no longer sexually exclusive with one partner, but your partner knows about it and is cool with it. Another word for inconsent. Is cool with it. So one way of doing that is swinging, right? Typically a couple will go out swinging together and they'll go to a club and they'll have sex with other people, and of course they know about it because they're watching each other typically, right? And we joke that swingers have sex and polyamorous talk about it. We're just processing our feelings the whole time, because there's a lot more to it than just the...
Yeah, although if you're swinging and you're swinging responsibly, you're setting boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
And you are talking about it.
Yeah.
But that's, yeah. Very interesting. There was something else that came up for me. And I cannot remember what it was.
Well, if I can pick up on your boundaries question, and then perhaps it'll come back to you. So let's talk a little about boundaries. How do you know you've encountered a boundary? Typically when you run full tilt into it. It's sore, by the way. It hurts. So there's also a difference between a rule and a boundary.
Yes.
So a boundary is something that I impose on myself, and a rule is somebody I might impose on a partner, on you, right? So the boundary would be, I will not be in a relationship with somebody who has unprotected sex with me.
Right.
A rule is, you will not have unprotected sex with somebody else.
Right.
So I'm not saying you must or mustn't do, you can do whatever you want. I'm just saying if you have unprotected sex with somebody, tell me, because I will no longer have sex with you until we're both tested. That's a boundary I'm imposing on myself. I'm not giving you a rule. Now you must do with it what you want. You might decide then to go and have protected sex with somebody, in which case everything's cool. So what other boundaries exist? There's quite interesting ones, right? The boundaries around time. This is one of the things you raised. How do you have the time? There's boundaries around space. So we're in the very fortunate position, Tracy, of having a cottage on the property, which we've converted into an office. But we also have a fold-out bed. So if one of us wants to bring a partner home, there is a venue, we call it a venue, that we can use. But actually it's my partner's office. I use it as well, but essentially it's her space for herself. And so recently, my other partner brought somebody home, and my partner felt quite violated that we were now using the office for sex. Now, it had been agreed that when we got the office, when we decided to convert the office, that we would be using it as a venue. And it was agreed on, but you know what happens? We don't know what's going to happen until it happens, right? And so then we had to start thinking, okay, well, what are the boundaries around this space? Who is allowed to use it, and for what? Who makes the bed afterwards? Who prepares the bedroom for the couple who wants to come and use it? So these are interesting considerations and thoughts. Here's another boundary. There's an informational boundary. How much do I want to know about one of my partners having sex with somebody else? And over the course of this decade or so we've been doing this, that answer has varied, but typically I want to know a lot because I think it's quite sexy. But that's also violating consent, because did her partner consent to me knowing stuff about him? Maybe not. So we've had those boundaries tested as well. And so I have different boundaries, funnily enough, with the different partners. How can I not? They're different people. So different people have got different appetites for how much they want to know and how much they're prepared to divulge. And my job is to make sure that those boundaries remain intact.
I like that a lot.
I don't know if your other thought
occurred to you. No, it hasn't come back.
Okay.
It hasn't. But I'll WhatsApp you.
Okay. So there is one other there are two little things I wanted to talk about. The one is what they call the one penis policy.
Yes.
And this is very often people who are new to polyamory. And again, it's the couple who decides to look for the hot bi babe.
Right.
And then they decide they can't find a hot bi babe. And then they say to the woman, or the woman agrees, that they will find other relationships, but only with other women.
Okay.
Because women typically don't have penises. And men are very insecure about their own penises. And so they don't want other penises in their woman.
Right.
And so they enact what we call a one penis policy, OPP.
Yeah.
And it's also a form of controlling behavior and jealousy. And, women are coming to me now, they come to poly cocktails and I talk to women. And women are doing this. They're saying, young women are saying, I want to be non-monogamous. And the men that I date, I tell them up front, I want to be non-monogamous. And then the men say, you can be non-monogamous, but only with other women. And you know what these women say to me? No, he's controlling my sexuality.
Yeah.
I'm not bi. Now I must now go and be bi for him. So we've got an Instagram account, Polyamory South Africa, and I made a joke on the Instagram account. Okay, I'll only date women if you only date men. When you date men, I'll date women.
Yeah.
And I had a guy on the call the other day on the online version of Poly Cocktails. He said, "But I'm very traditional. You know, it's a one man deal. I'm African, we're traditional. But you know, there are polyandrous people in Africa, black Africans, who have social structures where women are allowed to and encouraged to have more than one lover, male lover."
That's what I wanted to ask you.
Okay, what did you want to ask?
So that's a concubine, right? Or not a concubine, it's...
Paramour is another word.
Or which tradition allows... yes, there's certain black cultures. Look at Zuma, how many wives did he have?
So that's an interesting one, because in the Zulu culture, in fact in the South African cultures, you know, not the Vavenda so much, but the AmaZulu, and even the Khoisan indigenous, the real indigenous people of our country, they are polygamous. They are polygynous. So what that means is men are allowed to have many women or many wives. It's according to Ethnologue, 86% of cultures in the world are non-monogamous.
Right.
Only 14% of cultures in the world are monogamous. The majority of those cultures are polygynous. What does that mean? One man, many women.
Right.
So the genus is like a gynecologist. That's what it's from the Greek word gyneka, meaning woman, for what it's worth. But there are polyandrous societies, and they are scattered all over the world, in the Amazon basin, in Alaska, and among some of the Aleut people, and in Africa. Also the Mus were very famously of China. So the Ovahimba of northern Namibia have this situation where they'll marry a man, but they will have men on the side. A friend of mine's mother always used to say, Nicole, she used to say, "Marry a nerd, have a jock at lunchtime."
I'd like that.
You see, and what's wrong with that? As long as the nerd knows about the jock.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Because there are things that a nerd can give you, Tracy,
Yeah, of course.
that a jock can't.
Absolutely, and
There are
vice
things that a
versa.
jock can give you that a nerd can't.
I love that.
Isn't that great? And this is what the Ovahimba do. And they will, the women will go and they will bring children home from their other lovers, right? And the men welcome these children as their own. These children have a name. They are the children that are born of carrying water. Because what I do is I say, I'm just going to go and fetch some water. And then I come home pregnant, right? Because I did a little bit more while I was there. But these children are welcomed into the homestead. And in fact, you find that there's a higher, the women are happier. There's a higher infant survival rate among women who have more than one lover. Now, it's not mandated, you don't have to, but there's no problem. The men are not jealous of their wives. They are not jealous of their stepchildren. They treat everybody as and one Himba man said, if a cow gives birth to a calf in my kraal, whose calf is it?
So it sounds so lovely, but
Where's the but, isn't it?
yeah, I wonder, do these women give consent? Is there any, abuse? Is there any underage?
In Ovahimba?
Yeah.
Oh no, you can read the
Okay.
research reports. There's none of that. There's none of that. These women are free agents.
Okay.
So there are cultures where there are essentially child brides. The women are married off as children. They don't have sex with their husbands until they come of age. But there are these. But this is not like that at all. The Ovahimba are it's a very different.
I'm just thinking about a conversation I had with somebody who works in my home, and yeah, she described a similar situation, that these young girls go down to the river and they get raped and then they have children, but okay,
that's
so it's a
something
different, okay.
So there's a practice which is actually outlawed in South Africa called Gutwala. And I don't want to go into that. It's a
Okay,
cultural
yeah.
practice, but it is outlawed in South Africa, and it is very abusive. Yeah.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
the other thing I wanted to talk about just briefly is I'm reading a book at the moment, the author of which I can't remember, sadly, but it's the first book for clinicians on how to approach couples or people in polyamorous relationships.
Yes.
It is the most astonishing book. It's called Polyamory.
Yes.
I bought the first edition. It is phenomenal. And she talks about what she calls a body of, a decision-making body.
Right.
And we talked a little bit earlier about couples privilege. What is the decision-making body in this setup? So you'll often find the little pockets of power. So this person is the decision-making body around this thing. But through the pandemic, this COVID pandemic, for example, we hit our heads against this. It came to pass that two of us wanted to go to, I think it was Poly Cocktails, and we wanted to go out, and somebody said, you can't go out because there's a pandemic on, and it's a restaurant, and I'm uncomfortable with the risk. And now what do we do? So who's the decision-making body? And this has to be contracted. And these things are boundaries. They're difficult conversations, and they're necessary conversations, and everybody needs to be taken into account, right? Everybody. So it's those are the two things I want to talk about: the one penis policy and the decision-making body in relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose it's just about respect. That's comes down to respect. and
Short
the fact
supply
that-
sometimes.
Yeah, but everybody needs to be respected, since we are talking about our bodies and our well-being and our health. It's a similar kind of thing with vaccinations.
Yeah, absolutely right. And so we'll talk a little bit about the other thing that arises very often is what about STIs?
Exactly.
So here's the thing.
Wow.
Yeah, the University of Minnesota found that polyamorous people are no more likely to have STIs than monogamous people, and in fact slightly less. And what's the reason for that? Because we talk about barriers, we talk about STIs, we get tested regularly. We understand that we're part of a sexual network. And as a consequence, if I make these choices for my own body, I'm actually making choices for certainly both of my partners. And it has happened that condoms have broken.
Yeah.
Not with me, but with one of my partners. And then everything stops. We all go and get tested. We talk about it. We try and understand what went on. We then renegotiate what the boundaries are. Okay, now we're fluid bonded with that person. Who are they sleeping with? We have these conversations, which monogamous people on a drunken night in a pub do not. And that's where they pick up the STIs.
Of course.
But people think that we're promiscuous, polyamorous people. They think that we are like vectors for disease, and none of this is true.
I get it. Eric?
Tracy,
Viedge?
well done.
It has been really enlightening, as our previous discussion. Again,
Thank you. What did you take away? I'm interested to hear what your takeaways are.
the one penis policy.
Okay, what
which
about that?
I really am so, it makes me mad,
Oh, good.
furious.
Yeah, no, it's
The boundaries that I think for me as an intimacy and relationship coach, boundaries just scream at me all the time. What also shouts at me is that we are all individuals who have our own needs, and we have to be talking all the time. Without that flow of conversation, without trust and without a sense of safety within any relationship, we cannot be getting our needs met. And that's a fundamental for me in all relationships. And I just feel like in an ideal world, if couples could start off having this conversation, what does monogamy mean? Are we realistically in this for 50 years? Because marriages are lasting longer than they ever did before. Some 60 years, you know. Does this mean we are only going to be having sex with one another for the rest of our lives? And can we change our minds? Can we renegotiate this contract? What does that look like? What if we do want to go swinging? Or we do want to bring in another partner? What does it look like?
Or I want to fall in, or I've fallen in love with somebody else. What does that mean
Exactly.
for us?
What does it mean for us? Heartbreaking. Heartbreaking nonetheless. But let's rather be open and have the conversation in a controlled environment with a therapist, and let's just look at the dynamics. Polyamory, if held within a structure, can really be beautiful. And I was also thinking when you were saying like the capacity to love more than one person. I have 3 children. I have the capacity. It's very difficult to split my time and my attention, but it is possible. Emotionally, I can be emotionally intimate with them, connection with them. Obviously.
And if you're like my children, they're all different.
Of course.
And you learn different things from each other, and
Sure.
we show up differently with each. Certainly, I show up differently with each child.
Absolutely. There's intellectual intimacy, there's emotional, there's spiritual intimacy, there's physical intimacy, not sexual intimacy.
No, of course not.
Obviously. But, to add all of that in with a partner, with more than one partner is quite daunting. But anyway, so it's been incredibly enlightening again and amazing to have you on my podcast. So thank you so much. And you can get Erich again, Viedge, on his relationship coach.
Yeah, the Relationship Coach Show, it's called, yeah.
Relationship Coach Show. Thank you, learner lovers, for joining us again on this episode about polyamory. And I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.